What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another and the first proper episode of Burning Questions for the new season. We've got all three of us here. This is what we're hoping to show throughout the season. I'm Harry, and yeah, we've got Andy for the first episode now, for the first time this preseason. I'm sure he hasn't just been on holiday like he normally is. He's been working hard, that's why he's been busy. But we're here less than 3 days away from the start of the season. Andy, first of all, how are we doing? Welcome to Burning Questions 2024-2025. How are we?
Very good. Thanks for the introduction, Harry. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see our new lovely co-host in Tom. I really enjoyed the episode last week. As Harry mentioned, life has been extremely busy for me. So I'm going to try to do as many episodes as possible this season, but that's why we brought Tom on. But great to see you guys. You know, when you pod for 1 year with Harry, what you notice that is about him is that he starts off being a very kind soul and a nice person,
I
and
don't know what you're talking about.
eventually the real side of him starts to pop up, and he's been shit talking my team nonstop. So ready to get the season going, to say the least.
You sent me a team and it suddenly had, you sent me one team this morning and then about
Stop
two,
it.
two hours later, you sent me a
it.
new draft and it suddenly had three extra players that were in my draft in it, and it just seemed all of coincidence. Anyway,
Get
we'll
outta
get to
here.
our drafts at the end of the show. Tom, how are we doing?
Yeah, very good. Very busy at Scout, as you'd expect. But yeah, happy to be here. And I'm hoping your rank is going to rub off on me throughout the season. But we'll see.
Yeah, we will get there. We'll be here every week, so it will be a combination. We'll try and do the three of us as much as possible, but it means that we won't have so many guests. We'll have at least two of us here pretty much every single week. So that's the aim. If you guys in the chat could say hello, welcome to Burning Questions for the new season. If some of you could just let us know that everything's looking and sounding okay. This is the first time I think I've ever done a three-person stream. So a little thumbs up in the chat, a little hello here or there could be great. And if you haven't already, please do like the stream. That would be fantastic. But yeah, that is Burning Questions for the new season. Game week 1 is just a couple of days away. Today we are going to do cheap defenders, cheap midfielders, mid-priced midfielders, and then forwards. And we will give Andy an opportunity to tell us why Son is the best midfielder in the game once we get to his draft. Spoiler. And I'll do my best to convince him that it might be the other way around. But what we're going to do straight off the bat is have a look at some of those cheap defenders. So we're particularly looking 4.5 million and below. There are, of course, the more expensive ones in the likes of Trent, Gvardiol, Porro that we're all looking at as part of our defences. But the 4.5 million and below is definitely causing a lot of discussion. I'm pretty set on one, which has changed as preseason's gone on. We've got a whole list of predicted points up on screen from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Interestingly, we've got Kwanzaa now right at the top of the predicted points for the first 6 weeks out of any of the 4.5 million defenders. I was a little bit surprised by this. Andy, I know you are quite hot on Kwanzaa. Let me know, talk to me about him and why he's the one that's gone into your draft at the moment, and any others that you like on this list as well.
I mean, I don't think I'm like 100% sure on him, to be frank with you, Harry, because he's not going to give you any attacking returns, right? This is a pure sort of clean sheet play over here. And the first game week fixture is great. Second one's a little iffy. Third one is a little iffy. And then from 4 onwards, it gets great. I do think that he will most likely retain a spot. So that's why I'm, kind of bullish on him being a very decent 4.5 asset. I feel like it's a spot to lose is the point I'm trying to make. Plus, with the wildcard sort of game week 4, 5, 6, not 5, game week 4 or 6 in my mind.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to have 3 Liverpool for now. And then we can just kind of alter everything once we figure out who the, key big boys are in terms of, Liverpool assets. Diaz might become a, exceptional option. Salah might become a must-need option as well. So, I think it's an okay option to have, but I'm not like super bullish on him. And it's just a pure clean sheet and rotation play for me.
You're saying you're not fully bullish on him. If it wasn't going to be him, where else do you think you'd go in this list? Who else takes your fancy? Who's next?
Yeah, so that's the thing about like this season is like I really enjoyed making drafts in some ways because there's no template, right? But you can really move around a lot of pieces to fit a lot of different pieces, if you know what I mean. And what works really well for me is to have an Aston Villa defender in place, which would be, what's his name? Konza, right? So I think he rotates well with who I have. So that's the other one that I was looking about. The game week that really stands out to me is game week 3. It's how do we combat game week 3? Because it's really tough to have a strong field. So you're up against the field, up against the rest of the players in terms of 1 or 2 spots. So that's pretty much it for me. There's 4.5 wise, like, to me, it's like it's hard to predict, right? Like, I know you're high up on Mikolenko, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like he screams as a better option than Konza or Konza or Dunk or whoever it may be. So or Burn, sorry. So
I know what you mean. Game week 3 is really interesting because when I plan my drafts in advance, game week 3 is the sticking point, which is why I like Mikolenko. He's got Bournemouth at home that week. I also like Robinson. He's got Ipswich away that week. And I also like Forest, who've got Wolves at home in game week 3. So I feel like one of those does help. But outside of that, I can understand like some of the other ones. Tom, so Kwanzaa is Andy's. Where are you going with 4.5? I know some people are actually not going with any because they don't actually think they're as valuable as well, which is, of course, an option.
Yeah, well, I think I've been on a bit of a journey with the 4.5s in pre-season because at the start, I think the Palace guys really stood out. Gahey and Anderson, although they've now both got strong transfer speculation against their name. And I think we've seen Henderson and Munoz come to the fore a bit more. So they're probably an avoid. I think Chelsea stood out initially before we started conceding buckets of goals in pre-season. And then obviously, I think Lisandro Martinez at 4.5 caught my eye at the start. If they can get a full fit backline together for the season. But yeah, as we've gone on, I think Quance has obviously come to the fore, as Andy said. But for me, the one who's in my team is Lewis Hall. I was sort of convinced by Planet FPL's Newcastle podcast because they're really high on him and they think he's going to start. And until they sign a centre-back, Dan Bird's going to be at centre-back. So Lewis Hall's pretty nailed at left-back, at least for the early games. And he's super attacking. And obviously that Southampton at home fixture, for me, stands out. So yeah, I'm on Lewis Hall at the minute. I do like Quansah as well, and because I haven't got Trent, there's a real big possibility he ends up in my team as well.
That's the thing that I feel like with Quansah is I don't want him. I don't want him to be my third Liverpool player. Like I've got Trent and I've also got a midfielder in my team as well. And if I go Quansah, and suddenly I want a Diaz, I want a Jota, a Salah, I want a Darwin. And I've locked myself into 3 Liverpool with a 4.5 defender. That's why I don't have him. I don't think he's a bad pick in isolation, but I think I don't think it's worth my third Liverpool spot. If it's only your second Liverpool spot, then I don't mind it so much. So yeah, I started on Mikolenko early on in the season. Branthwaite not being in pre-season is a concern for me, absolutely. I'm now ended up on either a Nottingham Forest defender or I'll end up on Anthony Robinson at Fulham. I just been really impressed with them in pre-season. He's very attacking as well. And everyone's, we're all buying Muniz and Smith Rowe because of how good their fixtures are at the start of the season, right? And if they're linked with, they do need a new centre-back. If they're linked with Anderson and something like that does go through, it massively, hampers Crystal Palace and it massively boosts Fulham. So Anthony Robinson is in my draft at the moment. And I just love their opening fixtures. So, I mean, there's so many, and I don't think it's clear cut about who it's going to be. And I think there'll be a transfer between now and game week, now and the end of August that changes it as well. Because if Gay goes to Newcastle, it impacts Burn and it might impact Lewis Hall. If Anderson goes to Fulham, it impacts Crystal Palace and it impacts Fulham as well. I always look at the underlying data for Nottingham Forest though, and I want their goalkeeper so much in my team. But we just don't know. So I might end up with Ola Aina as my 4.5 if I can't work out who's going to start in goal for them.
Yeah, I think the one thing about Lewis Hall, Tom, is that I see the upside in him. We're assuming he starts and he's pretty safe for minutes, at least in the first, let's say, 6 game weeks. But you have to ask the question, how often are you actually going to use him? Because if I brought in Lewis Hall in my team, I still have decent defenders such as Robinson, such as Barco, where I can play them, plus Kwanzaa, plus Poro, plus, Trent. So I just don't know where I would fit him in, is because I also try to bring him into my team, if you know what I mean. So I think it's a lot of based on who you have and how you rotate these defenders, especially at the 4.0, 4.5 bracket.
So on that, sorry, just to add another name into there, which I think impacts it a lot, is how much we trust Barco. Because if I trust Barco, I'm happy to have a 4.5 and Barco and leave it at that. But if you don't trust Barco, then 2 4.5s is much better. So it kind of depends how much you trust this 4 million option that we've got at Brighton. I trust him, so I don't have 2 4.5s. But if you think he's going to lose his place quickly, then you need 2 4.5s, don't you?
Yeah, unless you have sort of Gvardiol, Saliba, Porro.
Yes.
Which is more and more common. I think going back to Andy's point, I know I'm a Chelsea fan, so the chat can grill me, but I would bench Gvardiol this week for Lewis Hall, I think, because I think we're going to score. So
this week I agree with you. You have to play him against Southampton, right? But because they're so attacking and you know, maybe the logic's reversed. But yeah, first game week you play him. It's just like after that, the rotation for the other defenders I have, I don't see Lewis Hall fitting in. Maybe game week 3. That's about it, is the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, just one name, Harry, sorry, from the chat. Leif Davis, who's not actually on this list, but he was sort of a big favourite at the start with 18 assists last year. Has he featured for you? Is he a consideration for you at all?
No, and not many newly promoted players are a consideration. I just am very, like, he's got 18 assists last year, but he got 18 assists finishing second in the league, right? How many assists is he going to get when they're on the back foot and they're finishing predicted, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th in the league, right? So at the moment he's not. Their fixtures in game week 3 onwards though do look really nice. So if you start with a Lewis Hall and he loses his place, Leif Davis might be a type of player that you think actually from game week 3 onwards you do start to have a look at him. He's not one I've considered. I just think there's enough more reliable players that I'd rather for the start of the season. Interesting, you're benching Gvardiol game week 1. I currently have Gvardiol on the bench as well, but I have Barco as my one starting over him. I feel like that is so close between the two. I do think Chelsea score though. That's just my bias. And if Gvardiol isn't attacking like he was in the Community Shield, then I'm not sure he's worth starting this week. From game week 2 onwards, he looks great, but yeah, that's my debate. I love Barco, but maybe I'm getting too high on a cheap option for the start of the season.
Yeah. I mean, like, Az was hyping him up enough for me to trust in Az. Like, shout out Az, by the way.
Az hyped up João Pedro last year, and that all went horribly wrong, didn't it?
Yeah, well, Az to Brighton is like me and Son, so yeah. I have a sweet spot for him over there. But yeah, like for example, one thing I want to mention is Fella says, shout out FPL Fella, by the way, he says maybe don't own any of them. Like, I just think there are so many good 4.0, 4.5 options that even if you went one premium defender and 4, like let's say 4.5 unders, and you invested heavy up top, it's not a bad idea too, because in general we say that at the start of the season, last season data is somewhat out of the window. We don't have enough data for us to really formulate objective data points of view. On top of that, it's like, even with the Trents, even with the Gvardiols, even with the not Porro, but even with the Arsenal defenders, yes, there's a sense of trust, but we really don't know how they're going to start off defensively. So I just think that the first 3-4 game weeks, it's okay to invest more into the budget defenders than to just trust straight off the bat that Gvardiol is going to give you clean sheets, because it might be system changes, it might be they're trying to get the feet running, blah blah blah. So I just don't see that many safe clean sheets straight off the bat. It is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. Apart from Arsenal, I can't see Arsenal not being as like. I went to the Arsenal Lyon game at the weekend, and they just completely suffocated them. They had no opportunities in that game, and I just think they'll try and do that week in, week out. So Arsenal, I actually don't have any Arsenal. I keep saying this, and then I end up with no Arsenal in my draft just because of that first 5 fixture run, and I hope I can get away with it with someone cheaper. But I think Arsenal, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep like 19, 20 clean sheets this season. Like, that's how good I think they'll be. And I think we will double up on them from game week 5 onwards, despite the price. Like, I think we will all still be there. And then, the centre-backs scored again, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's a matter of time before we get probably 2 Arsenal defenders in our teams. But that's the thing, right? It's just, you can't have them all. We have to keep remembering you can't have them all. And even today before our stream, I made like 8 different draft variations right before we came on. So it's just like, I am foregoing Arsenal defense assets for now, and we will get them in when we need to, which is pretty soon.
So back to the 4.5s. If I ask you for your top 3 for the start of the season, let's say you're carrying them to about game week 5 or 6, you hope that you don't have to make a transfer for those 4.5 million defenders. Mine in order is Robinson of Fulham at number 1, Aina at Forest at number 2, and then I go Mikalenko of Fulham, Everton as my number 3 in that order. Tom?
What's the deal with you and Mikalenko? Why do you like him so much?
I mean, Everton was so good defensively last season, and he's 4.5. Like, all the other Everton options are 5 million or more expensive, and he's just the cheapest way. He had a better points per 90 than all the other Everton defenders. It's just that the injuries that he had last year meant that he wasn't a popular pick. But his points per 90 were better than Branthwaite and Tarkowski. But Branthwaite's not in training. So that's why he's not top anymore.
Go ahead, Tom.
My top 3 would be... Lewis Hall for me is the most attacking that we can get. Quansah, I think, for the fixtures. And then if you're looking at a bit longer term, I do like Colwill or Fofana, because I think Fofana is a good goal threat and we've got good fixtures. But yeah, as Harry says, Robinson is probably up there.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, I think I would go Robinson too. Just the fixtures are perfect for the first 6, and cheap as well. And probably number 2 is Quansah, and number 3 would be Lewis. But
thing is with Lewis Hall, if I asked you which of these defenders on this list do you think is most likely to score a 15-pointer in game week 1, all 3 of us would say Lewis Hall.
Yeah.
But that's also I framed it the same with Haaland versus Salah. If the game week 1 and 2 fixtures were switched around, would we feel the same way? Like, if game week 1 and 2 were switched around and Haaland had Ipswich at home on game week 1, he would be 80% owned, and I am so confident that would be the case. But people see Chelsea away in game week 1 and think they can go Salah instead. And I wonder if it was the other way around for Lewis Hall when he went away to who have they got, Bournemouth away in game week 2, I think. If it was slightly different, maybe people would feel differently. But I think it definitely applies to someone like Haaland and Salah. But we'll talk about them when we'll get to our drafts. Cool. Next up, the cheap midfielders who feel like they've been through, again, we've been through such a roller coaster with these from the whole of pre-season. We started off with, I feel like Callum Hudson-Odoi was in every single draft when the game launched at 5.5. Then it moved off a little bit and we all went on the 5 million option in Rodgers and just saved the 0.5. Then Smith Rowe came along and he started scoring, and now he seems to be in every single draft that I see. Every single draft has a midfield of Saka, Jota, Eze, and Kunku, Smith Rowe, and I see it in, I bet both of you have got at least 4 of those 5 in your drafts for game week 1. I do like Smith Rowe. I look at the data from when he was at Arsenal. He does have a great goal scoring record. Really, really impressed with him so far. He's playing so far forward as well. He's probably my number 1 pick as well. I do like Hudson-Odoi. I was slightly concerned, though, with Hudson-Odoi that he didn't start the last preseason friendly and they played a system that just didn't need wingers, which was a massive concern, that they have systems available in their locker that just doesn't include him. And I don't want to pick a player that it might happen to. Like, they might go up and against an opponent where they don't want wide wingers and suddenly he's not in the team and they go with Anderson or someone like that. There are so many on this list. Like, some people in the chat saying, could Iwobi be a better option than Smith Rowe? What about Minte? What about McNeil? Like, there are so many. So who started first last time? Tom. So we'll go Andy first. Talk to me about these 5.5 million mids. Have you got one in your team at the moment? And are there any others that you are considering for the start of the season?
Yeah. What was Palmer when he started last year? Was he 5.5?
5.
He was 4.9 at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, does anybody stand out to me? I mean, not really, right? It's like I think 2 seasons ago, I remember Huang, for example, another Korean player, was 5.5, had a really good stretch. You just really do not know who's gonna, who's going to stand out from the list once the season gets going. That's my thinking, right? So we know ESR is Emmett Smith-Rowe is, you know, our Arsenal player, not born and bred, but grew up in Arsenal and academy player, blah, blah, blah. And look at the Fulham fixtures. You just have to play the fixtures if you're going to go for a 5.5 midfielder. So for me, it's just no doubt Emmett Smith-Rowe is the number one option if you're going to go here to this price point.
No one else, like, at all? Are you fully locked on Smith-Rowe? That's fine if you are.
Yeah, I think for 5.5, I would go there. Plus, for me, it's more of these combinations, and him and Joe Pedro just rotate so well. Like the Fulham and Brighton is where the rotation happens. So as much as I want Muniz over Joe Pedro, you sacrifice that, you know, I have to go either Bob or probably Winks, and it just doesn't make sense team-wise and rotation-wise. So it's also that factor as well, to be frank with you.
Just on Bob, so this list does include the 5 million options as well. Bob is in there, as is Rodgers, both in the sort of top 15 or so midfielders that we've got. Rodgers was very, very popular at the start of pre-season. Bob is also becoming a little bit more popular. Slight uncertainty of minutes, but feels like the one that has the ability to be crazy explosive at the start of the season. Have you had drafts with the 5 millions in, Andy? They're not in there anymore, I presume.
Yeah. Sorry, I totally forgo Bob. Yes, I am still considering Bob. I have the draft I'm showing today doesn't have Bob, but you know, 1A, 1B has Bob in it. And I believe Bob's been a Man City Academy player for a while. I think he's been there for a few years. So, you know, I can't remember an exact example, but I feel like Pep tends to sort of, you know, kind of raise these young kids into the first team and slowly give them chance after chance. If Palmer stayed longer, who knows? He could have, you know, had more appearances. Foden is a reminder of he struggled for minutes, blah, 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 and now he's a bona fide starter, right? So last year, I remember Bob had the winning goal against Newcastle when KDB sort of came back from injury. So that was my first sort of like memory of who this guy is. I feel like he's a great, you know, 1v1 sort of winger. And instead of like cutting in, sort of like Robin, he likes to go to the end line and cut back and pass a lot. So he could be an assist machine, like with the amount of talent they have up top, including Holland. So Alvarez is gone, I believe. Savinho is in. I don't know what the deal with Savinho is right now, but it's him and Savinho for that right wing spot. So we assume Bob's going to start because he's had a pretty good preseason. And you know what? He might be playing more than we expect him to. Like, yes, he's going to not start every game for sure. But I feel he might play a lot of games this season. So could be a very good, even sort of timing it right throughout the season type of pick, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you think game week 1 is that time? So my thing is, like,
you need him for game week 2.
We spent 4 seasons trying to get Foden to be nailed enough for us to pick him. Like, it's taken that long for Foden to get to that point. And are we just assuming that Bob is already at that point? Like, yes, it's... I think it's short term, right? Isn't it? Like, can we get game weeks 1, 2, and maybe 3 out of Bob? Like, the upside is there. If he starts the first 3, if I told you that he started the first 3, I think all of us would probably consider that and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, he's in my team. He's in my team at the minute. Do
you think he starts the first 3?
Yeah, although I'm going to bench him in game week 1, but yeah, I think he'll definitely start the second game, and that's when I really want him. And the way I look at it, I want a team that means I can play Bob in game week 2, because you were saying last week that you weren't that keen on Bob because you didn't know who you'd bench.
Yeah.
I think you said Saka of Villa maybe, but probably not. So,
yeah.
So the way I've got it at the minute, well, at the minute I've got Jacob Murphy in for game week 1, and then I can swap him in game week 2. That's my plan at the minute. With and then I'm eyeing up Minter in game week 4 because I think you want a Brighton attacker for those 2 games. The safe option, as you've said, is obviously Smith-Rowe because he's going to play and he's got 4 good fixtures, and it's also a bit of fun on Friday. You've got a player.
Although he might be on my bench by Friday.
Oh, you've been watching those bench points at first.
Yeah. So you say you've got Jacob Murphy. Is he your favourite of the 5.5s, or is it only because he rotates well with Bob?
It's the latter. It's because I want to have a team where I can play Oscar Bob in game week 2. because I think that Ipswich at home game, like if they were playing last year in the FA Cup, you'd put money on 4 or 5-0, wouldn't you? And I don't really see why it's any different now. I think City could run riot, and everyone's going to have Captain Haaland, so I want to have a sort of extra ticket in that sort of Man City raffle, as it were. But yeah. And then Jacob Murphy, I know you were talking about him a couple of weeks ago. You went on one stream from hating him to loving him in like 20 minutes.
Literally, you can watch it, and like I went from 5 minutes. Someone said, "Oh, well, it was the one I did on my own." Someone mentioned Jacob Murphy, and I was like, "Oh no!" And then I looked up his data, and I think like 5 minutes later, he was in the team that I was building on stream. So yeah, I think like as an early season pick, again, I think by game week 3 he'll be by game week 4 after the international break he'll be a transfer, but. Again, if you ask me which of the 5.5s, if they start the first 3, do I think scores the most points? I would say Jacob Murphy.
Yeah, I mean he scored 5 goals in pre-season, got 3 assists.
Yeah,
I think he started the last 12 games of last season. The only issue is his minutes. If you look at his minutes on Flash Score, they all start with a 6.
Yeah.
So he does get hooked around 68, 69 minutes, but I think he's the.
Sorry, I just wonder if that's not going to happen in game week 1. Because the whole reason he gets hooked is Barnes comes on for him and Gordon goes to the right. I wonder if Gordon's not ready to play those minutes yet. And I wonder if it'll be Barnes comes straight on for Gordon and we get Murphy for 80 or 90 against Southampton on the opening day. It feels like Lewis Hall that if I was picking a free hit in game week 1, they'd both be in it.
Yeah, I mean, that appears to be what I'm doing at the minute. But yeah, I just really want to play Oscar Bob in game week 2. I just can't get that out of my head. So, and for me, that's Murphy. And then, maybe I'll wildcard in game week 4. I can make a transfer. I can get Minter for those 2 fixtures because we haven't really talked about Minter, but he looks like he could have a seriously good season this year.
Yeah.
And who have they got in game week 4? They've got 2 really good home
Ipswich
games.
and Forest at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that seems to me like a decent plan. But yeah, I think if you're looking to just pick one and set, I think Smith Rowe is probably the one there.
Yeah, Minter's really interesting. Go on.
That's the same concern I have with Murphy. I think FPL TT wrote a very good thread on Newcastle, and he was saying the same things. He's about a 70-minute player, right? So the minutes is where I'm kind of, how much upside can you get in 70 minutes is the question I'm asking with him.
But the thing is, I need a goal against Southampton, and I think it's pretty possible. So.
Yeah. I agree. They're also linked with right wingers, right? Which is why, even by game week 4, I think he'll be a transfer out. But I think he is great. I think he is great early on. Cool. Yeah, there are so many names on this list. I want to go through a few of the others and just get your thoughts on them. Either of you can answer this. So the first one is going to be Semenyo at Bournemouth. Again, like without Solanke there is a chance he plays some of the minutes up front, some of the minutes through the middle. It doesn't look like he's on penalties, so that's, not as much of a positive for him. But without Solanke there, is he going to be more of a focal goal scorer? The opening fixtures are pretty mixed. Tom, what do you think?
Well, the penalty thing's interesting because also on this list is Clivert, who took the penalty in pre-season. I think if we think he's on penalties, I don't see any reason why he'd pick Semenyo instead of Clivert.
Over him, yeah. Cool. The other one being asked in the chat is, so I know, Andy, you want Smith Rowe. Have you considered Andreas Pereira at all, or is it clearly Smith Rowe of Andreas if we think Andreas gets penalties?
I just think Andreas sometimes gets a little too deep at times throughout the last season. And, when you have a 5.5 basically left forward in Smith Rowe, I'm just inclining towards Smith Rowe over Andreas Pereira.
I agree.
But the penalties might be a big thing. But I would. Don't you assume Muniz will be taking him?
No. So they had one in pre-season, and Muniz was on the pitch, and he didn't even take it. Andreas wasn't on the pitch either, but we're almost certain it's not Muniz.
Interesting.
Who did take it?
Lukic. Which is really random.
I mean, he's going to be starting as well, isn't he? Maybe
at the moment, yeah. So it could well be him. It's going to be like Milivojevic or whatever it was at Palace, who just took penalties after penalties every week, just ended up being such a good pick. It's going to be like that. The player on this that is the most highly predicted points over the first 6 game weeks, not one of us has mentioned, is Ben Brereton Diaz at Southampton. likely to be playing as one of the first two, the front two. The opening fixtures after game week 1, where they go away to Newcastle, are really good. It again feels like people see Newcastle away in game week 1 and aren't considering it at all. Has Ben Brereton Diaz crossed your mind, or is it the fact that it's a newly promoted team, you don't trust it? Because he was good at Sheffield United last year. We all thought about him at times there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about him for 1 second, to be honest with you. But I mean,
That's
what's
fine.
that game week 5 fixture that looks really good on the screen?
On the ticker, I don't know who have they got in game week 5. It does, because it absolutely spikes it, which is probably what it puts it up. So the game week 2 fixture,
Ipswich at home is game week 5.
Ipswich,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So maybe he's one I move on from Murphy, perhaps. But yeah, not for now. I don't think.
Yeah. Andy, any love for him?
I mean, really, the only Southampton player I would even barely consider is probably Armstrong up top.
Yeah.
We just need to see them play. I know they're very attacking, right? So that's a plus for him. But the only one that might have a chance into my team, which is very slim, is Armstrong, right? 24 goals last season, I believe. So
yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask quickly, Harry? Have we completely cooled on Rodgers then? Is he sort of been and gone, do you think?
I find it really hard to call. Their end of season form was so bad at the end of pre-season, but he started it so well, and they don't look like they're signing anyone who's going to take his place at the moment. They're not linked to anyone. My still concern is that they sign someone else that goes in his position. And, you know, when Champions League comes around after game week 5, like, what exactly is going to happen to him? That's my only concern. And the fact that I actually don't love the first 2 fixtures. I don't hate it. The issue is I probably prefer Smith Rowe now, and I'm not sure I want 2 of them. I'm not completely against it, but I think it's unlikely I start with him now. I don't know. Andy, how do you feel on Rodgers? He's still my favourite of the 5s as a long-term pick, I think.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, you would not even play him for the first 2 game weeks, right?
That's it. I probably wouldn't. Like, if you, let's say you had Rodgers away at West Ham or Smith Rowe away at Man United in game week 1, who are you playing out of those 2?
Smith Rowe. For sure, right?
It's close, but I think I'd probably say Smith Rowe as well. Let us know in the chat who you'd play out of those 2. Because if you're answering Smith Rowe to that question, then I don't think you pick Rodgers. Like, if you're not going to pick him, play him for the first 2, then you're getting too close to the Champions League, in my opinion. But he might end up in my team.
Yeah. I will say this, though. I was talking to Baker, shout out to Above Average FPL Boys, and he has gone for Rodgers plus Bob in his team. So he's doing the sort of, so it's so funny. He was saying, I believe one of them is going to explode. So he's just putting both into his team and waiting to see which one explodes. But so, you know, he has Rodgers for a reason.
We've been going 45 minutes. We've done 2 of the 4 categories. So very quickly, top 3 again in this bracket. They can be 5, they can be 5.5, and taking in value into account. I'm going Smith Rowe 1, Jacob Murphy 2, and Callum Hudson-Odoi number 3. Let us know in the chat your top 3 as well. Tom, you went first last time, I think. I can't remember. Tom, you go first.
I think if you're sensible and looking long term, go for Smith Rowe. If you want a bit of fun, I think Murphy and Bob are the best 2 for that.
Yeah, good summary. I'll say this. I'll say the exact same thing as Tom.
Cool. The only other one is a few people very quickly have asked about Carvalho going to Brentford in the chat. The issue is A, we don't know he's definitely going to start, and B, we don't know he's definitely going to start game week 1. If we get something in the press conference that says, yeah, he's ready and he's going to go and he's going to start, then I think he's definitely probably my favourite 5.0, but I'm just uncertain about minutes at the moment and what role he's going to play.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he's in the midfield 3 or the front 3, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It might depend if Visa's linked with a move to Wolves today, and Tony might go, so he might get in there. So we'll see. Next up, we're going upper little bracket in terms of those midfielders. So we did the cheap ones first because I think Smith Rowe is better than some of the players we've got on this list. We're looking at 6.5 all the way up to 8.5. So we have got Bruno Fernandes and Martin Odegaard in here. They are predicted to score the most amount of points, but when you look at their points per million, they don't rank at the top, right? So the points projections say if you've got the money, they're worth it, but you're better off cutting money out of Bruno and Odegaard. Third on the list, new community darling, that is Diogo Jota. Looks like he's going to be starting the first few. Well, game week 1, you'd presume anyway. And then it's Eze, the other community darling, in at number 4. So, I mean, I've got Jota and Eze in my team, along with Nkunku, who feel like the 3 most popular ones at the moment. There are definitely other picks as well, but I do think we all fall into the same camp of those 3. Are there any others on the list? Because the big one for me is Gordon versus Jota, right? They're the same price. I've gone Jota because I'm not having Salah and I want to cover Liverpool. But is Gordon still just a better pick at 7.5? Let's start with Gordon versus Jota. So I think, have all 3 of us got Jota at the moment?
Yes, I've got Jota.
So you've got Murphy, so maybe that's why you don't want Gordon. But if you took the 2 in isolation, would you go Gordon or Jota? Is it Liverpool coverage because you don't have Salah?
It is, but also I think Jota is actually really good, and I think he's going to start the first few games, so it kind of seems quite obvious to pick him. Like, he's one of the... If you told me everyone is going to start 38 games, Jota would be at the top of, like, near the top of the list to pick, wouldn't he? So if we think he's going to start,
he'd be 12 million.
Why you don't pick him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So Gordon, I think, is interesting because did he play 45 minutes in the last game?
Yeah.
Obviously, that home fixture is really good, but you wouldn't think he's going to play more than 60. And then after that, he's got a few away games, which the data is kind of bafflingly different home and away. So I'm not too high on Gordon. I think someone you didn't mention, which is top of the list for value, is Bailey, who I haven't actually considered, but maybe I should be. Andy, what do you think about Leon Bailey? Because he's top of the list for value.
I did consider him. I just don't think game week 1 is the time. Like, maybe if you want to go hopping around in this price point bracket, I would consider him around game week 3, but then we have to start considering walk-ins by that time, right? There's so many transfers we have to make around that time. So I just don't see his value from the get-go when there's plenty of better options for me personally.
So for example, you could go Bailey game week 1, bench him in game week 2 against Arsenal for Oscar Bob, and then have him from game week 3 onwards.
Yeah, fair.
It's just a thought. It's just Aston Villa are about the only team that I look at that rotates well with Oscar Bob because of that game week 2 fixture. So that's part of the reason I like him. There's so many on this list though.
There is really. Yeah. So, I mean, like I think this is actually the toughest bracket to really pick and choose your weapon because, like, the ones that are popular right now are Jota, Gordon, Eze, and Cuckoo, right? And maybe you have to pick 2 out of 4. Maybe you have to pick 3 out of 4. And I honestly am going in circles with these players. So Jota is just like number 1 out of them, just because we're replacing Salah with him, right? We don't expect him to replace Salah's points, but when he's on the pitch, his numbers are great, right? So I think Jota is a no-brainer unless you're going to go Salah or even double up with them. Would you guys agree there?
Yeah,
I think it's worth the gamble. I think it's worth the gamble.
It's worth the gamble. I mean, but there is this though, Harry. It's that Liverpool have not made any signings. Like, I find that incredibly wild with Slot coming in, because usually when a new coach comes in, you need to have signings, right? And like, him and Klopp have similarities, but they're also very different, right? Because Slot wants to build up from the back, right? And their midfield, and especially their number 6, is non-existent right now. Like, Enzo is not going to do what Slot needs him to do. They need a ball carrying, really good with the ball at the feet type of number 6. So I just wonder, right? Maybe we're hyping up the Liverpool assets a little bit too much when, yes, they had a great preseason, but their midfield is kind of incomplete. Wouldn't why are you laughing? No,
I agree. I like, if they hadn't have put 4 goals in at the weekend, maybe we wouldn't all have Diogo Jota in our teams. But the thing is they did, and they absolutely have the ability to. They absolutely have the ability to do that. And they have enough midfielders though. They have them.
I mean, yes, right, but they overlap, right? So like you'll have Soboslai and McAllister starting, obviously, but they don't have a number 6. Is the point I'm trying to make, and even their back line is kind of little iffy at this point in time, right? So
yeah,
maybe they don't build up as well as we expected, especially when the Premier League whistle blows from the start.
Interesting.
The way I see it is like, and maybe I'm too reductive, and that's maybe why I've never got like, you know, top 5k rank. It's only sort of 150, but like the way I see it, just keep it simple. Jota's one of the best assets, and we think he's going to start, and he's got great fixtures. Yeah. He's playing up front, and he's in good form in pre-season. So I just think, why would you not want to pick him? And he's actually still quite differential. He's 10% owned, isn't he? So like
that will
for
only
me,
go
he's
up and
in.
up.
Yeah. Harry, I wanted to ask you something, because last week you were so high on Eze.
Yeah.
But obviously there was a few sort of small links to Man City in the Athletic this week.
Yeah.
And Man City have got 90 million quid now in their back pocket from Alvarez. Are you not slightly worried they might pay the release clause on Saturday night or something?
A little bit, and I'll see how the news goes between now and then. But I just look at him at 7 million, and he's right up there for value. Of any player on this list, there's only Bailey who goes up higher than him, and the fixtures are good. Like Brentford have just conceded 4, so I still think I want to take the gamble for game week 1 on him, unless it looks really likely that it's going to go. But that's the issue with the transfer window going until game week 4, right? That's the only thing. People are saying he's injury prone. It is true. They did manage him much better at the end of last season. I feel like they're getting an understanding of how to manage him a little bit better. If I knew he was going to play the first 6 at Palace, there's no doubt for me that he is the best value pick up there within the game. I love him at 7 million, but it's the move and it's the injuries which does put a little bit of doubt in my mind.
Is Jota then not the perfect sort of foil for Eze for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you can move to Eze when the window shuts, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've got both.
Yeah,
but I could go like
Kunku as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I could pick someone else on this list over Eze for the first 2. But the issue is the first 2 are pretty good. It's not like Aston Villa where you want to review after the first 2. Game week 1 and 2 where they've got Brentford away, West Ham at home. Like I want him for those 2 games. If I'm reviewing it in game week 3, I feel like I'm already too late for it.
Yeah.
He's been, I think, in every single one of my drafts. Anyway,
yeah.
A couple more.
Can I just shout out Mbeumo quickly?
So I was going to ask about 2 players. The first one is Mbeumo. So give me your opinion on him.
Well, I think if Tony leaves, is Tony even going to start game week 1? He's played no preseason minutes, has he? So, and he wasn't even in the team at the end of last season, was he? He was on the bench for a long time. So, if Mbeumo we think will have penalties, I think he's probably being a little bit overlooked, I would say.
Yeah, and again they play. Dare I say it? Where are they? In game week 2, they go away to Liverpool. Do you know who has a good fixture in game week 2? Say the line.
Bob.
Oscar
Mr.
Bob. So, like, you got Smith Rowe and Nkunku in your team at the moment. You could go with Brian Mbeumo and Oscar Bob for the same price. If Tony leaves, he's got to be on radar.
Yeah.
He's got to be on radar. But then if Visa also goes, what does that do to them? I'm not sure they'll let both of them go, but maybe they will. The other one who is being spoken about in the chat, I'll ask you, Andy, is Jared Bowen. Had a pretty good pre-season, going quietly about his business. West Ham have massively strengthened in the transfer window as well. Got to be on radar, surely. Is it just the early fixtures that put people off?
It is, but in some ways he is fixture-proof because he is the talisman. Not in the same way that a Man City player might be, but I just think there's better options at this point in time, especially with the fixture. You just got to play the fixtures from the start. Which brings me to my point, which is I need you to help me sort out this Gordon, Eze, and Nkunku issue and how to rank these guys.
I think Nkunku will have the most points by the end of the season, and he's the cheapest.
Because you're a Chelsea fan, Tom.
Yeah, but he's also he is. I think. I don't know. He won the Bundesliga Golden Boot, but when you watch him play, he is I think he's a level above most footballers in the league. I think he could be 10 million next season. That's my shout.
I need to hold my nerve on him. he's one of the ones that I look at. If I need money for something else, he'll be the one to go. If I get cold feet on Solanke or I get cold feet on another midfielder, and Nkunku is the one that I look at that I'll get rid of, and I don't want it to happen. I need to hold my nerve on it.
Yeah, watching him play, he reminds me of Hazard a little bit. The way he was dribbling in pre-season is like he's got that special quality. And he came on the pitch at half-time on the weekend, and we were just so much better in attack with him. He links up well. He can dribble. He's always looking to shoot. He ends up in the box, and he almost scored with an incredible overhead kick as well. Like, I think he's really special. And
we know?
I think he's going to make a mockery of 6.5 price tag.
Damn.
There you go. Do we know if Rodri is playing this weekend? Because that for me is a big thing. If Rodri
you would assume not. You would assume not.
I haven't even seen pictures of him back in training yet. If Rodri starts this weekend, then I'm a bit like, oh, that Chelsea midfield versus that Man City midfield. But if there's no Rodri in there, Nkunku is in and he's starting for me against City.
There's a bit of feedback in the chat, as we expect. But from my Nkunku shout, but someone saying he's not guaranteed to start. I think he is going to start.
Yeah,
I would be absolutely shocked if he doesn't. And another person saying he's injury prone. Well, he might be, but he's fit at the minute, and he's played 90 minutes.
All right. Okay, hold on, Tom. Let me ask you this. So you guys just signed Neto, which is a great signing in my opinion. You have Neto on the left. You have your Cole Palmer on the right. You've got Jackson. You've got hopefully Felix. If Felix comes in, it's a issue, and it sounds like you guys told me before the pod he's not coming in, right? They're going to sign. Yeah. You guys are going to sign Osimhen, right? Who else do you have? Raheem Sterling, Madueke. I mean, what the hell?
Nkunku will play the vast majority of Premier League games when he's fit.
But it does mean it might be 70 minutes.
True.
He's not going to play 90. But I also don't think it guarantees Palmer to play 90. And I know we're not talking about those premium players, but when we've got, let's say we get Osimhen and Felix, let's say both of them happen. That means Palmer's going to have to, there aren't minutes for every single one of them. Very few of those attackers will play 90.
Madueke and Sterling would probably leave if that was the case, I would have thought.
Yeah.
But the thing with Nkunku is as well, he can... he could start as the number 8. He could get moved to the left when Mudryk goes off or Neto goes off, and then he could move to number 9 when Jackson gets taken off for someone else. So, obviously he does have minutes threats, but he also has the luxury of being able to play basically anywhere in the front line. And
Maresca's been very positive that he wants players who don't have a rigid position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 6.5. If he was 7.5. To be honest, at 7, I still think he was, still a good pick.
So you both would, Chelsea bias aside, take him over Eze and Gordon?
Gordon, definitely for me. Eze, with the transfer rumours, probably. And he's cheaper as well.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
And if Osimhen comes in, that enhances Nkunku, would you say?
Then we get both, I assume. But
I don't know. I just think Osimhen will just come in and take Jackson's place.
Yeah.
As much as I love Jackson, I just think that'll be what happens.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's not a Chelsea podcast, but I really hope I'm not really that keen on Osimhen signing, to be honest.
I hope
Jackson starts every week, but
yeah. I hope we get a little bit of common sense and stop signing ridiculous players and selling our homegrown talent. But that is one for a podcast for another day. We're going up front. The last section before we look at our teams, we've got forwards from 5.5 or actually 5.5 up to 7.5, adding in the new man Dominic, well, not the new man, but the new man Dominic Solanke into the list. You've got Muniz, actually predicted to be the highest scorer over the first 6 weeks because of what we said about those Fulham fixtures. But if we're all going Smith Rowe, do we want the double up? Then you've got Solanke next. But in terms of value, you've got Chris Wood and João Pedro and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Delap of Ipswich and Armstrong, all better for value than Solanke on this rating. So Solanke is predicted to score the points, but is he worth the 7.5 when some of these others have the opening fixtures that they do? So Andy, first of all, from a Spurs point of view, how do you feel about Solanke signing? And do you think he'll do well?
I think he's a good signing. I think it was a much needed signing. Spurs needed a classic striker, right? And if you look at Son's career, he's always played really well with a sort of classic striker. Kane comes to mind, but Kane is a little different breed because he does drop deep and is able to make passes. But I think for people who have listened to Burning Questions in the past, I tend to rave a lot about the Son/Llorente era, where they made that Champions League run, and like how well he feeds off of a tall striker who's able to get the ball on his head when it comes across. So the thing that's like a little bit of a question mark is how effective Solanke is going to be, because I think Solanke is going to make everybody around him better, including Son, including Pedro Porro, including even Udogi, who comes into the center at times, right? So that's the only thing, but I'm sure he's going to have a good season and a very solid signing, to say the least.
Nice. Worth the 7.5 then, do you think, Andy? You don't have him at the moment.
I mean, again, it's all team dependent, right? Like 7.5 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's 1.5 more than Muniz. It's 2 million more than Joe Pedro, right? So it's like, what can you do with the 2 million? And at this point in time, I can do more with the 2 million than have Solanke and sacrifice that fifth midfield spot, for example, or that second premium defender. So I would like to wait and watch, but it's also different for me because I have another Spurs player in my team, which I believe will do.
Who's that?
Better.
I wonder. So you've gone Muniz, right, as your pick?
No. I would like Muniz, but I've gone John Pedro for now.
Do we think João Pedro's... I'm going to say it. Do we think João Pedro's nailed?
Yes. I think he is.
And do you think he's nailed to play more than 60?
Yeah, I think he would be unlikely to come off before 60. I mean, who would come on? Evan Ferguson? I mean...
Well, no, he's playing in the 10. He's not playing... Like, they're playing with Welbeck up front, who is also on this list. Oh, no, it's not. I cut him out. I cropped him off. Oh, yeah. But he's not actually playing up front. And they do have so many midfielders. Less central ones, though, is the thing. They have so many wingers. They'd have less number 10s, particularly now Gross is gone and Enciso is injured. It's just on pens. Yeah. I think 5.5
If he was a midfielder, would he be the best 5.5 million midfielder?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that says a lot, really. The way I see it is that in my team currently, I've got Solanke and Porro, or that could be João Pedro and Trent. So that's the conversation, I think.
If he was a midfielder, he would be 6.5.
Yeah.
He'd compete with those 6.5 million midfielders if he was a midfielder.
I get your question,
but
Harry.
I'm concerned about his minutes. Yeah.
Do you think Welbeck's a better pick then?
No. Well, I do think he's going under the radar. Just like I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is also going under the radar. He missed 5 games last year. There's this whole thing about Calvert-Lewin's always injured. He missed 5 games last season. He's on pens that you get with João Pedro.
How many did he start though? Was he not to pick you up, but like was he benched for?
I think he played a lot.
That's a shocking stat. If that's true, that's unbelievable.
Let me get.
I find these attacking price point, well, struggling for words, very enticing in all three individually, because Pedro had 9 goals, 3 assists in 19 starts. Muniz 9 goals in 18 starts, 0.55 xGI per 90. Wood also had 14 goals in 20 starts. So actually their stats are pretty similar and their xGI is pretty similar, especially in the second half of the season. So
I had Chris Wood for a while. I had Chris Wood for a long time, and then Solanke moved, and it's quite hard to justify the Wood João Pedro 0.5, I think.
The opening
what
fixtures,
about Muniz?
That Bournemouth at home fixture in game week 1 screams goals for Forest.
Yeah.
That's the thing with them.
What were you saying, Tom?
Do you think Muniz justifies the 0.5 over Pedro?
That's where I'm struggling with. If they were the same price point, I would go Muniz. I prefer Muniz just because of the fixtures and similar stat line, and much more safer than for minutes in general. Like something about Joe Pedro at the back of my mind is minutes risk, right? So I do prefer him. It's just, is it worth that 0.5? Because that 0.5 goes a long ways elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So just on Calvert-Lewin, he missed 6 games last season. 3 of those were at the very start of the season in game weeks 1 to 4. He played over 2,000 minutes. He did only score 7 goals. But he got 5 returns in his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In his 5 returns in his last 7 games. And he scored twice in pre-season.
6?
He's 6 as well. And
I mean, yeah.
And Brighton at home in game week 1. Spurs away in game week 2. Perfect for an Oscar Bob. And then has a nice run of fixtures from game week 3 onwards. He's just one to look at. I don't think I'll go there. But he has the pens. And if we're talking about João Pedro being a good pick because he has pens, then surely we consider Calvert-Lewin. And people saying Everton don't score enough goals. And that's part of what puts me off. But it also means that he's much more likely to get bonus. If he scores, particularly because defenders are getting less bonus this year and goalkeepers. So Pickford and Branthwaite and Tarkowski will get less bonus than they did last year. If Tarkowski's scoring and they're only winning 1 or 2-0, let's say, like surely he's got to be in consideration because he'll get that goal will be worth not 4 points. It'll be worth, 5, 6, 7 every time he scores.
Yeah.
Do you think Ndiaye though might be better at 5.5?
For some Everton fans, I'm not sure I see it, but maybe they use Calvert-Lewin as. I don't see it. I can't see a word where Everton don't start with Calvert-Lewin. Like he is to Everton what Solanke is to Bournemouth to me. Like I don't see like that happening. He's such a dice forward as well. Anyway, so
it's one to consider.
Yeah, I mean we probably won't start with him, but that's when they're fighting for relegation. So what we'll do is we'll do which of these do you think will score the most points over the first 6 weeks, and then we'll go which of them do you think is the best value pick, right? So do you think that Solanke is the best? I think Solanke will probably score the most points, but I think João Pedro is the best value pick for the money.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue with that. If Muniz had penalties, I think I'd say him, but...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, the same? I mean, I think if price was not a factor, I would still prefer Muniz over João Pedro, to be frank with you. And then you say very confidently that Solanke will have the most points, but yeah, I'm not super sold on that.
Interesting.
What about Mateta? Do you think you were really high on Eze's fixtures? If Mateta hadn't had the Olympics, do you think you'd be considering him?
Well, I think so. I think I would consider him. It's just the Olise missing is the big factor for Mateta.
But it's like Eze is cheaper and on set pieces and on pens, and he's a midfielder, so he gets you the extra point for a goal. Like I don't see me paying an extra 0.5 to lose all of that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Mateta though, he's a different player. Like he scored 5 goals at the Olympics as well.
Yeah, he's
mad.
Solace. Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. Right. That is everything we wanted to cover in terms of discussion. So what we're going to do now is our drafts. Andy, you're going to be up first.
Oh God.
We've put your draft up on screen. Read it out for the podcast listeners as well, and then we'll ask a couple of questions. Read your team out, and then maybe discuss a couple of the players who are different to what everyone else is picking. So maybe Kwanzaa and Son or something like that.
Okay, number 1, guys. We haven't done a plug yet, so please do hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Our subscription for Fantasy Football Scout, I believe, has a discount right now. So, 40%, use one of our codes. Use one of our codes. Sign up. We have an app out as well. So, I really think
the app is
Scout is a great place to be. The app is great.
The app is on my phone, and I of course doing this and being on Twitter, I spend my life on my phone, and the app has been an absolute godsend. I use it all the time now. And the members area, the predicted point, everything, like the fixture ticker on it is so good. And it's only going to get better talking to Reese and what the team are planning to do with it as well. So the members area is great, and especially with the addition of the app as well. Absolutely love it. But yeah, like the stream if you haven't already. And Andy, let's hear the team.
All right, so this is draft variation 2500, by the way. So this is far from the final team, but for now I have Henderson, Fabianski, Trent, Kwanzaa, Pedro Porro, Barco, Robinson. In the midfield, Son, Diego Jota, Gordon, Smith Rowe, and then Kunku. And up top, Holland, Isak, and Joe Pedro. So
talk to me about, so we've spoken Kwanzaa, but talk to me about Son. Because for me, when we have Son at 10 million and you then have Solanke at 7.5, I would do Son and João Pedro to a Solanke and a Bruno Fernandes or something like that.
Yeah, fair play. So I mean, it really comes down to Son versus Saka, it feels, right? Like, because you both, I assume, have Saka, and most people are going for Saka, and sure, I get it, but how do I say this? Because I want to be as objective as possible. I don't think he's had a good preseason, Sonny. And I don't think Spurs have looked good at preseason at all. By the way, if there is a fixture to target attacking-wise, especially set pieces, it is Tottenham. They are awful in terms of set piece defending. So I did watch a lot of the preseason games. I wasn't convinced. And I have no idea why I'm still going for Son. But, you know, this is a different take than usual, right? Like, the heart wins this time. How many more seasons am I going to have in FPL where Son is a premium asset before he fades away into the sunlight and nobody beats Father Time?
No pun intended.
Exactly. Yeah, and Leicester, Everton to start the season. Solanke as his new Batman and Robin partner.
It's interesting. We often sit here and we have this discussion, and your heart is saying Son, but your head is also saying Son. That doesn't feel like the case at the moment. This is a
correct.
If you were going head only, you wouldn't have him. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that.
I think it would be more of a debate, I suppose.
Yeah, it would be more of a debate. I just think that I can get away without Saka or, you know, for the next 2, 3, 4 game weeks, because I really believe in that first Leicester fixture. And if you remember in 2022, September, he came off the bench and had a hat-trick in 13 minutes against Leicester. This is his favorite team to play against. So
yeah, but
you know,
that was a whole different Leicester team, and it was like a front three of Kane. It was a completely different Spurs and Leicester side as well. Was that
full? So I just say to Andy to back him up a little bit. You were saying Spurs haven't had a great preseason, but Leicester have had a terrible preseason. And Steve Cooper's already moaning. They haven't done any signings. They haven't really got any strikers. They got loads of injuries. They got battered at the weekend by a French side. Apologies, can't remember who. But yeah, so if there's one team where I think there's sort of a 4-5-0, I think it's Spurs this week. I would have thought.
Yeah. Look, I'm gonna back him. I'm about 98.5 to 99% sure I'll have him in my team. And you know what? If the first 2 game weeks don't go right, like I have a wild card in hand. I have plenty of transfers I'm sure I can use. I can make the easy switch to Saka unless he rises. So be it, right? Like I've got 36 game weeks left to become number 1 in the world. So, you know, let's roll the dice.
Yeah, and also game week 3, if it hasn't gone well, you can do Son and João Pedro to Watkins and someone like that. It's when the Aston Villa fixture starts to look really nice. So I understand it over the first 2, and Leicester, I agree.
And Saka has a good fixture in game week 3.
Yeah. Like Leicester, partly because they are, you know, impending a points deduction potentially. Leicester are favourites to get relegated over any other team, and they look. Their preseason has been horrible, like truly awful.
But they're about to sign Jordan Ayew, so
that will help. Who do they play in game week 2? It's not Oscar Bob. It is Fulham away.
Smith Rowe. There you go.
There's the Smith Rowe, Robinson, Muniz hype coming into full effect in game week 2 as well.
Harry, I also do objectively want to mention that Solanke is going to make Son better. That is a fact. It's going to create more space for him to run in, and I feel like it's a good partnership. So that's what I'm banking on a little bit. And yeah, again, like my FPL season moves up and down with how Son's doing a lot of the time. So so be it. But also, like, you were about to talk me out of bringing Son, so talk to me about that.
I mean, that's because I don't think he's worth 2 million over Solanke, and I don't think Solanke makes Son a better pick. I like Son is so good when he's given space to go into the middle of the box and finish like he does. First time, someone else cuts it back to him, and Son is there in the middle of the box, or maybe he runs in behind. Because he plays with forwards who leave space for him, Solanke doesn't do that. Solanke will sit in that 6-yard box, in the middle, on the penalty spot, and he will be the one that finishes those chances, in my eyes. Son will get more assists this season than maybe he's had in any season before, but I think his goal threat will go down. Because I don't think Solanke moves out like Kane did, like Richarlison did, like any of those forwards that have played there. Solanke is going to be on that penalty spot, and there's not going to be the room in that box, I don't think. So I think Solanke at 7.5, the only thing you're paying for Son is penalties, and I don't think it's worth 2.5.
Do you think Saka scores more points in the first two?
You think Saka scores more?
Do you think Saka scores more points in the first two?
So I would say no, but then I don't think Villa have been great in pre-season. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that different. I think Son probably does slightly more, but I'm not confident enough to start with Son. Just on your draft, Andy, I have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
First of all, is Smith Rowe? Are you likely to start him over Nkunku?
Yeah, for the first fixture.
Interesting. Okay.
Talk to me though, Chelsea fans, please. Like,
I mean,
should I be starting him?
I would look at Rodri. Like, if Rodri starts, then I would. If we think Rodri's going to play, then I don't mind it. If Rodri's not going to start, then I'd definitely play Nkunku.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
The chat is torn on Solanke versus Son. Let us know.
I disagree with you, Harry. I think Solanke is underrated at creating space for his teammates running into the box. I mean, maybe in the back of your mind, you just see him being in that central position, but even in that central position, he can move even 5 yards to the right and create space for Son to move in. I feel like he's got that enough sense to create space for when Son does run in from the left.
Nice.
Or maybe
just to spin it this way, if Richarlison had scored a couple of goals in pre-season, was guaranteed to start at 7 million, would you be picking him? Do you think? Yes. It's the Solanke, the name, or is it the Spurs position?
It's nailed Spurs position for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, and if they hadn't have signed Solanke, we'd all be buying Kulusevski.
Yeah. I don't think it's Son. I think it's the Spurs assets, and I think there's good cheaper Spurs assets. That's my take on it, I think.
Yeah. The other question is captaincy. You have it on the screenshot on Haaland, but where do you think captaincy might end up game week 1?
I mean, maybe Isak, maybe Son.
Yeah.
But I just don't feel like I need to risk it first game week. I feel Haaland is a great captaincy shout, even against your boys. Apologies for that.
That's all right.
Scored twice at Stamford Bridge last year.
Yeah. He's got a point to prove against Cucurella as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. Best defender in the league.
What do you guys think about Porro, by the way?
I've got him. I think he's great.
I don't have him. I'm not sure he's great.
It's great content. I mean, I think for those first two, he's like you were saying, Lewis Hall's got the biggest chance for 15-pointer. That's possible, but in those first two, like if there's a defender that you think could get 20 points in 2 weeks, I think it's Porro. But
the issue with that is the defender's got to be able to keep a clean sheet to get these points as well.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Do you think Leicester? Leicester, I'd be surprised if
it's just like.
Tom, you have not seen Spurs preseason. They are defensively woeful.
Yeah, but have the centre backs been back? Have they been playing the first choice 4? Because Udogi's just got back, hasn't he? And
let's still get one corner and they'll whip it in, and Wout
Yeah.
Faz will have it in. That's my only concern, is the clean sheets.
Yeah,
Is the
I
clean
saw a
sheets.
stat that where they are the 5th worst set piece defending team in all of Europe. So that's how bad they are set piece wise.
Romero bullet header then.
Potentially,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, opposite.
No.
Oh, you mean not Leicester?
Yeah, Spurs are.
I'm talking about Spurs.
Oh, right. People in the chat are
Exactly.
saying Leicester are rubbish at set pieces.
But like, newly promoted team, home game, first game back in the Premier League. That's my issue. I'm like, I think they all score.
Yeah.
I think Ipswich score against Liverpool. I think Leicester score at home. And who's the other one? Southampton. Oh, they're away at Newcastle. Game week 2 they'll score. They might not score against Newcastle. But Tom, your team next.
My team, yeah.
Run us through it.
I'll read it out for the podcast. In goal, I've gone for Henderson and Remy Matthews as the backup there, which potentially is a bit silly picking my second Palace player as a keeper, but we can discuss that. Gabriel, Lewis Hall, and Pedro Porro is my back 3 with Gvardiol and Johnson of Ipswich on the bench. I've got Saka, Jota, Murphy, and Kunku in midfield with Oscar Bob on the bench. And then up front, I've got Solanke, Isak captain, and Erling Haaland as well.
Sorry, I had my team up instead of yours. There you go. I've corrected it. Yeah, you've got that Oscar Bob in there. You've got Murphy in there. Yeah, it's really nice. It's just no Eze. Is the only player I look at that I really like for the start of the season. And you've gone Solanke.
Yeah, that's the sort of the A or B decision. Like, it's Trent and Porro. Sorry, Trent or Porro, and then João Pedro or Solanke, or potentially Muniz as well. But that's the sort of like where I'd sort of change the money around. I think I'm pretty set on most other things. Arsenal, like you were saying, Harry, that you haven't got any Arsenal and you think they're like the best team and stuff. So it's a bit weird there. But like that was the same with me. I didn't have any Arsenal for like up until last week when I got rid of Salah for Saka. But the more I listened, and I think it was FPL General who was just saying like, sometimes you just got to think like a casual, like they're the best team. They have the best defense. Lots of people think they're going to win the league, and they've got actually 2 decent fixtures. And you said Villa haven't been great. So the more I think about it, the more I think, yeah, just get Arsenal in. And that's what I've done with Gabriel and Saka.
I don't have any Arsenal defence. I do have Saka now. I mean, it's really nice. It's very similar to my team. My only question would be, as I know Andy was mentioning earlier on when we were talking about defenders, is do you need Lewis Hall? Like you're picking him as a game week 1 pick and you'll virtually never use him again. That's my only thing. And then you've gone Johnson over Barco.
Yeah, that was last night when the Brighton left back stuff was coming around and it was sort of just a panic. And I was reading on the site that Johnson was really attacking in the last friendly. I think they played a back 5 and they've got good fixtures after 2.
They do,
they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking about game week 3 being a bit problematic. They've got Fulham at home in game week 3. So yeah, and then Lewis Hall.
No Fulham in your draft.
No, I do want something on Friday night. I still think Smith Rowe could get in this team. I think probably, but Lewis Hall is an interesting one because I'm going to be honest. This is led by listening to Newcastle fans. It's not led by like my own sort of. I haven't just thought Lewis Hall's great. I think the content I've consumed has convinced me that he's going to start as left back. And you know, I remember him watching him at Chelsea when he was sort of in and out of the team playing as left wing back. He would always get in the box and have a shot. It seemed like every week he would miss a big chance. Every game he played, he would miss a chance. And I don't know. I think, as you said, that there's going to be one defender that gets 12 points on the weekend, and I think this could be Lewis Hall. So I just want a piece of it because I'll probably end up wildcarding early anyway. So I don't really see the harm.
Andy, any thoughts on Tom's team? He's got Pedro Porro in there as well. He's that captain game week 1.
Yeah, it hasn't moved at all. You call me biased, but I can't go to Stamford Bridge and captain Haaland. Like I just wouldn't do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it interesting how like Tom hasn't even considered Eze or Gordon, and
they've been in drafts. They have been in drafts, but I think Nkunku has never left. Jota. Well, if I take it back, it used to be João Pedro or Chris Wood instead of Solanke, and then in midfield I had Eze and Gordon. instead of Jota and Murphy. So yeah, but the transfer links put me off as a little bit.
Have you tried doing shout out Peter FPL.team, like have you tried messing around with your 5 defenders and seeing if it overlaps? Because I feel like just off first glance, maybe you're gonna have rotation issues down the line.
Yeah, I mean, game week 2 it looks good because I've obviously got Gvardiol.
Game week 3.
Game week 3, I would play Gabriel at home to Brighton, Gvardiol away at West Ham, and Porro or Johnson, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Lewis Hall's probably the weak link, as you guys have said.
But I love him for game week 1.
Yeah.
I like it. I like how.
But who would you get? Like, would you get Mikel? I don't know. We weren't that inspired by the 4.5 defenders. Like,
I mean, so let me get mine up. So I'd go Robinson, and then I'd go Barco. So I play Barco game week 1 away at Everton, and then I can play Robinson from game week 2. Is like it rotates well. I've got Johnson as well, so I don't have that 5th defender. Because I've upgraded.
Just to finish on my team, I love Munoz, but I don't want to double up, and I think Henderson's the best keeper. So,
yeah. I think
Munoz
has
been in a lot of my teams. Yeah, but are they not going to buy Ramsdale or something?
Well, exactly. If I knew Sells was going to start, Sells is the best keeper. So yeah, I won't spend too long on mine because it's quite. It's got a lot of the same overlaps. We've got Henderson in goal, Trent, Barco, and Gvardiol in defence at the moment. Diogo Jota, Saka, and Kunku Eze, Haaland, Isak, captain, and João Pedro with Smith Rowe on the bench. So I've squeezed 0.5 extra out of my defence to go. So I've gone like Gvardiol and a 4.0 over going with Porro and another 4.5, which I don't love, but I also don't love Porro enough to want to go there. You know, I do wonder about Munoz at Crystal Palace. If I didn't go Henderson in goal, then maybe might be more inclined to do it. Like I could go Munoz in a 4.5, for example, and do something like that. But I feel like my midfield, I'd be surprised if my midfield changes between now and game week 1. João Pedro may change, but I like some of those opening fixtures. And then defensively.
So tell me why you prefer Trent and Pedro over like Porro or Gabriel and Solanke.
I mean, am I the only one who's got Trent?
Yeah,
I've got Trent.
Oh, you got Trent.
Know. Sorry.
Trent is like I'm not going into this season without Trent. Looking that Liverpool team, I feel like are going to be better defensively, and like I just saw what he did with Jota at the weekend, and I was like, I'm not going. I think he's going to outscore. He'll be the highest scoring defender in the game for me for the start of the season and the fixtures. Right. If Arsenal had the opening run that Liverpool had, and Liverpool had the opening run Arsenal have, then maybe I'd reconsider it. But he came straight back into that team, played minutes, and their opening run is just so good. I can't see myself going without Trent. Gvardiol, I can see, he's my favourite at that price, but I don't know how many weeks it will take for him to start playing the position he played at the end of last season. Like, I don't think it will happen in game week 1 because of the other players that are back. Will it take till game week 2, game week 3? Like, at what point will I get the Gvardiol that I want and think I'm buying? At what point do I get that? Because if I get end of last season Gvardiol at 6 million, like for me that's a no-brainer. But I'm not certain we'll get it from game week 1, which is what puts me off him slightly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking team. I mean, there's nothing to fault here, and it's a classic Harry type team. So
I don't know about goalkeepers. We haven't really spoken about goalkeepers, and we don't have time to do it now. I just don't like them all, basically. I don't like any of them. No one has good enough.
Have you tried to fit Raya in or not?
Not really. I just don't see myself doing it. Like
Munoz and Raya over Gvardiol and Henderson.
Munoz and Raya. God, is that the same price?
It's $1 million down and $1 million up.
If I go Munoz, I'd want another 4.5. Like I would have to find another 4.5 to go Johnson to a 4.5. Like I then am stuck playing Trent, Robinson, Munoz every week, which feels just a little bit too short. It's worth considering, but it is just a 2 and a 6 every week. And I do think from game week 6 onwards, we'll want them. But I think I'm going to try and get ahead of it before that and then go back to it then.
Yeah.
It's where I'm at.
Harry, what's your world rank the past 4 seasons?
Andy was taking the mickey out of me saying he'd heard it too much over the past few weeks. It is second according to Premier Fantasy Tools.
Yeah, I think everybody else heard that 5,000 times, but
once the season starts, you won't have to hear it anymore, Andy.
The chip on my shoulder is I am here to beat you this season. So let's see how it goes, huh?
Perfect. Well, that is everything. We've done an hour and a half episode, slightly longer than we said an hour when we were zooming in, but we have done midfielders, defenders, forwards, and our drafts, and a lot to cover before game week 1. There'll probably be other things to do going into game week 2 and 3, but we will try and keep it to as close to an hour as we always can. We won't do any questions again just because we've covered loads of stuff and we've been going for an hour and a half. So the next time I see you both, the season will be well underway. We will have our first game week, and I'm sure we'll be ripping our teams up to buy some 5.5 million midfielder that we didn't even consider for the start of the season. I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a great first episode, guys. Show some love. Please do hit the like button. We'll be here every week, Wednesday, probably 12 p.m. UK time is what we're aiming for.
Yeah, 1 o'clock roughly.
Yeah, and obviously chemistry needs time to develop, but I thought it was I really enjoyed talking to you, Tom. So yeah, excited for the season.
Yeah,
thank you. Very much enjoyed it. And do check out the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Link in the description is 40% off. 2 days now to go, so make sure you get that edge over your mini league rivals by signing up.
And get the app. The app. Thank you, everyone. Like and subscribe before you go, and we will see you all next week.
Cheers, guys.